Nordic.
The man who shot 2 Jewish men near a Los Angeles synagogue last year was sentenced today to 35 years in federal prison. Jamie Tran had pleaded guilty in May to hate crime and firearms charges.
This sentence sends a clear and unequivocal message. Hate has no place in our community. Anti-Semitism has no place in our community.
U.S. Attorney Martina Estrada says Tran did not know the victims but targeted them because they were Jewish. The movie crew member in charge of the guns, who's in prison for the deadly shooting on the set of the film Rust, will not get a new trial.
When the manslaughter case against actor and producer Alec Baldwin was dismissed in July, just a few days into his trial over the on-set shooting death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins, the film's weapons expert Hannah Gutierrez, who had been convicted of manslaughter, asked for a new trial or for her case to be dismissed on the same grounds. But on Monday, Judge Mary Marlo Summer in New Mexico denied the retrial and dismissal motions for Gutierrez, saying the reasons that applied to Baldwin did not apply to Gutierrez. She's currently serving an 18-month sentence. Jason Nathanson, ABC News, Hollywood.
DirecTV is buying Dish and Sling in a deal that is a year in the making. DirecTV announcing it will buy the 2 streaming services from owner EchoStar in a debt exchange deal that includes a $1 payment and the assumption of almost $10 billion in debt. Chuck Sievertson, ABC News.
Oh, no. Stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
Good afternoon. I'm Will Feelwright with your KVNU News Update this hour. It's brought to you by Bell Medical as we have clear skies this afternoon, a little cooler than we saw over the weekend. It looks like it's going to stay that way as we head into this next week. I'll check your weather forecast coming up in just a minute. Well, Ogden Clinic has announced it's expanded into Cache Valley. They recently opened the Logan River location in Providence at 595 West, 465 North. Now, the new clinic is holding an open house tomorrow beginning at 3:30 and continuing until 6:30. Now, Cherise Campbell, who is Senior Marketing Director for the Ogden Clinic, said that they felt that expanding into the Logan area was the next step for serving people in Cache Valley. The Ogden Clinic has grown from a single location to a now respected corporation of 25 locations and over 1,000 employees. The Logan River facility will offer comprehensive care all under one roof. They offer primary care services along with specialized care addressing various health concerns from foot and ankle care to diabetes management. Well, coming up, 2 stranded rock climbers in American Fork Canyon are rescued yesterday after their rope malfunctioned. That story on the way next as we continue to see clear skies this afternoon. And it's been in the low 70s. It's going to stay that way through the rest of the day as tonight we'll see temperatures drop into the low 40s. Tomorrow be back into the mid 70s. A little warmer weather coming for Wednesday when we hit the low 80s. But then back into the 70s for Thursday. Friday, low 80s again. And it looks like it's going to remain clear through the next week with no chance of any showers. Well, in other news, 2 rock climbers became stranded when descending down a cliff in American Fork Canyon yesterday afternoon. Now, the climbers were on a cliff face near the Alpine Loop area, which is a popular site, especially during this time of year with the changing fall colors. Now, they had climbed up without any trouble, but as they were rappelling down, one of the ropes had a knot that had prevented them from descending. The Utah County Sheriff's Office says this happened at about 5 o'clock. They were able to get service to call 911, and a heavy technical rescue team was sent out to retrieve them. It took several hours, but they had the climbers back on the ground by about 8:30 last night. And authorities have now identified the man who was killed in a suspected road rage incident near Jordanelle Reservoir and ruled his death as a homicide. The deputies with the Wasatch County Sheriff's Office said that 41-year-old Patrick L. Hayes of Hideout, Utah, was shot and killed at the scene Wednesday night. Now, an autopsy conducted by the State Medical Examiner's Office confirmed Hayes' cause of death was a homicide. Now, the investigation began when deputies responded to reports of a possible deceased individual Thursday morning. They located Hayes' body outside of his vehicle on the shoulder of the roadway near the Ross Creek Trail north of Jordanelle. Now, authorities believe that a road rage incident may have transpired at around 11 o'clock on Wednesday night. Authorities did not confirm whether or not the other vehicle involved in the incident, described to be either a Jeep Gladiator or Jeep Rubicon, had been located. I'll check your local news coming up again at the bottom of the hour. KVNU News time is now 4:09, and For the People coming up next with Jason Williams here on KVNU.
Even though the weather's grown colder, you still have time to have your fruit trees pruned. Logan Extermination says your trees need to be trimmed back in order to achieve success next year. And this is the first step to a bountiful harvest. However, you could do more bad than good if you don't know what you're doing. Save the headache and call Logan Extermination today and get a jump on tree pruning. Prices will vary depending on your needs. Logan Extermination, 752-8450.
Reporting the news that matters to you. News Talk KVNU, 610 AM, 102.1 FM, your number one radio station for news and talk.
This is Dr. Red, chiropractic physician with Red River Health and Wellness. Are you suffering with fatigue, brain fog, headaches, intestinal issues, weight gain, and you haven't been able to find any answers?
Before I started at Red River, I was having a lot of stomach pain. I was overweight, severe anxiety, some depression. I had been to multiple doctors. I'd been to specialists. We had done tests, and no one could find anything that was wrong.
Red River Health and Wellness can help you.
I'm on anxiety medicine. I've lowered my dose, and I'm working with my doctor to continue to lower it. I'm sleeping through the night. I have energy for my kids. I've lost 30 pounds. I just feel really good.
Our goal is to teach you and educate you so you know how to manage your condition a lot more effectively, and you know what to do and what not to do for the rest of your life.
Schedule your appointment today at 855-55-RIVER. Red River Health and Wellness with offices in Logan, South Jordan, Springville, and St. George.
Call Red River today.
This is the Sean Hannity Show.
That poll, registered voters taken by Rasmussen after the second assassination attempt, and it revealed 17% of voters said it would have been better off for America if Donald Trump had been killed last weekend. Is this not like sick and disgusting and evil? That figure included a whopping 28% of Democrats in this survey.
Sean Hannity, weekday afternoons from 1 to 4 on News Talk KVNU. KVNU's For the People with Jason Williams and Bill Walter.
And it is Utah known as the fraud capital of the world. Not because we have more people committing fraud, but because we have so many people falling for it.
Going beneath the headlines and connecting you to the newsmakers.
The radio is a great way to get the word out to a lot of people in an emergency. So we thank you for your help and being a partner with us.
For the People on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM, 102.1 FM. Online at 610kvnu.com and on the KVNU mobile app.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. It is Monday, September 30th. That went fast, huh? Tomorrow, of course, October 1st, the Cache County, Cache Valley Bank, and CAPSA teaming up again to kick off recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October, with Ignite or Light the Night. You've probably seen some signs in downtown. You're going to see a lot of purple lights in downtown storefronts. And, of course, there is an event tomorrow night. 6:30 is when it starts at the historic Cache County Courthouse. Food trucks, entertainment, live music, things like that. And guest speakers organized by CAPSA and Cache County again to kick off Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We spoke with Catherine Buse of the Cache County Council last week on the show. And if you missed that, you can hear that interview on our podcast and see what it's all about. But that marks a month of recognition that will happen here in Cache Valley. So when you see those purple lights downtown, that's what they're about. Purple, the chosen color for this recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month here in Cache Valley. So keep that in mind as you drive downtown, and also check out some of CAPSA's resources. As we kick off the Awareness Month, the CAPSA offers a lot of training for the public. They'll come into your business and do a training if you want them to. But there are a lot of resources just right there on their website on how you can be an ally and very helpful in some situations, including some training on how to recognize signs that someone in your workplace or in your family, group of friends, neighborhood, whatever it might be experiencing domestic violence. And the one thing that always stands out to me is the one little note in some of that training on the capsa.org website says sometimes, it's as simple as just asking someone, hey, everything okay at home? And they're just looking for someone to talk to. You can get them talking and sometimes point them towards some of these resources. You could save a life, CAPSA reminds. So, again, that is kicking off tomorrow at the Cache County Courthouse, 6:30 p.m. when it starts. 2-hour event, live music, food, speakers, and CAPSA there to connect you with their resources and for education and more. So that's Light the Night, an event that will actually kick off tomorrow with this in-person event, but then throughout the month of October, again, downtown storefronts lighted purple each night in recognition of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. 2024 presidential election. We haven't talked about it a lot here on the show because I'll be honest with you, I got bored. I got it. The presidential campaigns never shut down anymore. There's never a month off. There's never a year off. We used to at least get. I remember dating myself here, but I remember back in the Bush-Kerry campaign, 2004. I remember reading this article with this journalist still working, I think, today for The Atlantic that was hand-wringing justifiably over, we only get like 8 months when they aren't campaigning now, or a year and a half at the most. The campaign starts so early. And now here we are 20 years later, and the presidential campaigns never end. I mean, literally. Whoever is going to run for president in 2028 is going to start campaigning the week after the election in November, and it wears on you. It has this tendency, for me at least. I read the headlines, I stay connected, I stay informed. I don't have anything to say about it. There are some aspects of the presidential election, though, that do suddenly get my mind worrying and thinking about it, and this was one of them. This was by Natalie Galicia, who writes for Deseret Magazine, which is a long form monthly, I think, attachment to Deseret News, the newspaper. But Natalie writing this week about the 2024 presidential election from a really unique angle. And the headline kind of says it all. She says the 2024 presidential election may hinge on the non-voter. And, I mean, how can you not click on that link, right? We'll talk about it in a few minutes, what she means by that and how right she is, but also why that's kind of frightening. If you put that, if you connect that to what I started saying here, which is that the presidential campaigns never shut down anymore, and sometimes it gets old for voters, not just for people who host afternoon radio talk shows on the KVNU Logan, but for just, the average voter with a life. Maybe I'm thinking of the person out there that, a family with 2 kids in school and all the things that come along with that, from, the school schedule alone being kind of hectic, but also the extracurricular activities. Maybe they're in soccer, maybe they're in football, basketball coming up. Maybe they're in middle school or grade school. None of that's coming up yet, but there's still a lot of extras going on, keeping everyone busy and running around, Little League and things like that. And people are checking in, maybe for 10, 15 minutes a day when they can to get their news. And they're not super plugged in, traditionally at least. They're not super plugged into even a presidential election year until mid-September, end of September, early October. Some voters in polling, exit polling, have showed that they don't actually start paying close attention to the presidential candidates until the last 2 weeks of October, which to me seems absurd. But then I sit and think about it and think, wow, so I think about something that isn't a super high priority for me each and every day. I'm a political junkie, but I think of my sports junkie friends, and they think I'm weird because I, a lot of times, don't really plug in to the NFL, for example, and until you get to, Thanksgiving time. I usually, a lot of years, I see those. I mean, I read the news. I follow, where the teams are at and especially my favorite teams, how their games went. And I try to tune in when I can, but it's not a super high priority until I see those games. Thanksgiving Day, usually, that's when my internal clock says, oh, yes, football. And then I pay closer attention until the Super Bowl. And my sports junkie friends think they're like, what? How can you not care so much the first half of the season? I don't know. But I try to keep that in mind when I get judgmental about voters who don't, plug in until the last 2 weeks of October in a presidential year. But I'm starting to really get it. I'm starting to understand the effect, even for someone who maybe isn't a political junkie, maybe more in the middle of the road there, where they're reading about it every day in some way. They find it very interesting, and they're really plugged into local races, legislative races in their state, the presidential election, all of that stuff. But it's not to the political junkie point, but they're definitely very engaged with the news, political news on a daily basis. I've talked to some friends in that category, and even they're burned out. So it worries me that I think we're going to see a higher than usual presidential election turnout again here in 2024. We saw it in 2020. We saw it in 2016. And then there was a gap, and then we saw it in 2008. And there are two things that get people super energized in a presidential election year. Mass hate for one of the candidates or mass love for one of the candidates. And I think in 2008, you had a little of just the mass love for one of the candidates. And then in 2016, I think you had mass love for the other for the candidate in the other party. And then 2020, I think you had a combination of mass love for one candidate, mass hate from the other side, and vice versa. And I think we're going to see that again here in 2024, even though for the Democrats, at least their candidate is an unexpected. Well, I mean, somewhat. She's only been the candidate since July, right? I think the effect this has is contributing to polarization, obviously. But this is the part that I've kind of wondered about, too. Is it also contributing to people who are just going to check out? And I mean not just check out of the presidential election year, but also check out on their local races, the actually important ones, like state legislature, in municipal years, their city councils and mayors, or in this year we've got some county races on the ballot. Are people going to check out of all of that because the presidential campaigns never stop, and it's gotten so ugly at that level of politics? That's what Natalie's writing about. We'll get to it. And with that in mind, of course, coming up in hour 2, we're going to run through the election timeline with Cache County Clerk Bryson Bam. He's going to join us at 5:10, start of the second hour of the show today, and we'll run through all the deadlines you need to know about, when ballots are going out, the logistics, basically, of this upcoming election, everything you need to know, including what it means that Amendment D will be on your ballot, yet no votes will be counted because of the court's ruling. The language the legislature wrote for Amendment D was dishonest to voters. All of that coming up with Bryson Bem in hour 2. On the other side of this break, though, we'll talk about what Natalie Galicia had to say. She writes for Deseret Magazine, a spinoff of the Deseret News, publishes once a month in long-form journalism and commentary. And it is titled, "The 2024 Presidential Election May Hinge on the Non-Voter." What she means by that and how it connects to my concerns about people just checking out, right after this.
News Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU.
It's true, many of us spend more time thinking about what's for dinner than thinking about retirement. But if you think your retirement needs deserve more attention, we agree, and we like to help. We're Edward Jones. Together, we'll give your long-term retirement strategy the attention it deserves. Stop by your local Edward Jones office, one of 11 locations in Cache Valley. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
I was told that I wasn't to say anything unless I was asked about it secretly. That I should keep anything I'm feeling inside buried extra deep.
Hey, this is Grace Gosted. I'm a singer-songwriter, and like many, I've been traumatized by years of bullying. You're ugly, you're stupid, you're gay, you're worthless. I've felt fear, humiliation, and shame. Bullying causes real harm and can result in severe long-term depression, anxiety, addiction, and even self-harm. I created the Black Box Project for anyone who has ever felt different for any reason. So what are you hiding? What are you feeling? Go to theblackboxproject.org to hear from me, a mental health expert, and find resources to help you take the first step on the road to healing. Again, go to theblackboxproject.org. You are not alone.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance are set to face off in the first debate of the vice presidential candidates. We'll have a preview. Also, a growing number of young men in their 20s and early 30s say they feel aimless and isolated. Why is this happening? And how much house you can really afford? We'll have some math. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. I've linked to it on our Facebook page if you'd like to read it. It's very long. It's written by a journalist, Natalie Galicia, who writes for Deseret Magazine. This is a monthly publication, long-form journalism, similar to a traditional printed magazine back when that used to happen, and a spin-off of Deseret News. But this article caught my eye, and it touches on what I opened the show with, this concern that, you know, since campaigns for president never end, and since politics have gotten so ugly and you know, just toxic in some ways, especially at the presidential level, but even sadly in some of our state races this cycle, I worry that voters are just going to check out. That that's what this is about. The title of the article is "The 2024 Presidential Election May Hinge on the Non-Voter." And Natalie starts with the story of an 86-year-old U.S. Air Force veteran named David Haddon. She knows his daughter, and she and his daughter were talking over lunch or something like that recently. And she told the story of when her father, when she was at her father's home and asked to help him clean up the kitchen a little bit, they ran across his ballot, and she said, "Where do you want this?" And he said, "Throw it away. I'm not going to use it." And she said that struck her because, you know, 86-year-old U.S. Air Force veteran, she said, "My father is a person who had always prided himself on staying informed and voting carefully. And even more so, prided himself and chastised others in the family who didn't vote. And here he is, he hasn't even opened his ballot, and he's saying, toss it in the garbage. I'm not going to vote." The article goes on to detail kind of how he got there. Short version, not a fan of former President Trump. He said, he told his daughter, you know, Trump being convicted on several felony charges and the events of January 6th, 2021, that riot at the Capitol. And then combining that, he said, with having voted for Joe Biden, but then being frustrated with the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, being frustrated with some things that were promised in the campaigns that didn't happen. Anyway, this 86-year-old veteran tells his daughter, just throw my ballot out. I don't plan to vote. I don't. He has reached a point at 86 years old where he has so little faith in the system that he doesn't really believe any candidate is going to make a difference, or that his vote even though it will be counted and could, you always hear the stories of an election that was swayed by one vote. That does happen a lot, by the way, here in Utah. Not one. Well, it has happened by one, but a recent congressional primary was decided by about 300 voters. 300 voters, 300 registered Republicans in that primary decided who was going to represent them in Congress. So your vote does very much matter, and Haddon acknowledges that to his daughter, but says whoever wins doesn't matter. And he's just frustrated. So that's where this article starts, but it goes on to detail some of the political science behind this, the chaotic presidential elections and things like that, the attempted assassination of Donald Trump at a campaign rally. It goes on, and it says that the unspoken part of this is that all of these news stories that seem to be happening every 2 to 3 days and reported on by well-meaning journalists at a breathless pace, because that's a journalist's job, right? But when something big and over the top almost is happening every 2 to 3 days, it has a tendency to numb the mind of newsreaders. It's too much. And this almost mental health survival instinct kicks in, Natalie writes, in which it starts to become white noise. They start to almost tune out. They're still reading the news or listening to the news, but they kind of tune it out too at the same time. So they're telling themselves, I'm staying informed, I'm still keeping up on the news, but it's too much for them and their brain's not logging it. A Gallup survey published in May of this year found that 84% of Democrats and 78% of Republicans are excited to vote and self-profess to giving the election a lot of thought. Only 60% of independents felt the same way, people who are not affiliated with one of the major parties. Natalie goes on to detail, so one of the biggest myths of how we vote, and people don't like to hear this, but it's true, is remember the slogan that was popular on social media a little while ago, it's facts, not feelings, or something. It was some version of that. It was the silliest thing because everyone votes with their feelings. It's just the reality of the human condition. We vote with our gut. We get a sense about a candidate or a party or an issue, and we stake out our ground. And even if sometimes contrary evidence is presented to us that is convincing, we don't want to hear it because we've decided where we're at or who we're supporting or what we're supporting. That's human nature. We do it all the time. But voting and political participation is, in the end, an emotional experience. And if the emotions get overwhelming, if there's too much in the news cycle, in the political events, in the language of the candidates, in the activity of the campaigns, and the campaigns never shutting down in between presidential election years anymore, it really matters. And so Natalie details not just so there are voters on both sides who have declared they're not going to vote. There's an anti-Trump group of voters, registered Republicans, lifelong Republicans, who have said, they're sitting this election out. What percentage of the potential vote that will be, who knows? But they've been very vocal, and political scientists estimate, there are probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of voters in that camp. On the left right now, you also have probably an equal number, or somewhere around the same ballpark number of voters who are saying they're going to sit out the election because being from the left, they can't in good conscience cast a vote for Trump, but they don't want to cast a vote for Kamala or that being kind of an extension of Biden's term as president as well, because they object to the way they've handled the situation in Israel and Gaza, supplying weapons to Israel and not holding them accountable for some of the atrocious news items that we've seen about civilians being killed in these military actions. And that's going to cause a lot of voters to withhold their vote, a protest vote, if you want to call it that, or in their mind, a principled vote against. So they're not voting for the opposition candidate, but they're not voting for the candidate they normally support because they have an issue with something. And it's happening on both left and right. And Natalie says there are probably a larger number of those voters in this cycle than in any recent cycle she can remember, based on what the polling suggests. At least there are going to be that many. But she says that there is also evidence from, some of the surveying that's been done on primary elections that have happened so far, special elections that have happened this far, that there's this other, as of yet, an invisible block of voters who aren't going to turn up. And their numbers could be huge. And these are voters that are just looking at both candidates, looking at the tone of the politics, looking at the fact that the presidential campaigns never stop anymore, and they're kind of sick of it. They burned out. And they're just thinking not of a protest vote or not specifically taking some action in support of or in opposition to one of the parties or one of the candidates. They're more thinking, I don't care about any of this, and most likely my life is going to be the same either way, regardless of who wins. Now, political junkies and political scientists will tell you you're wrong to assume your life will be the same. But at the same time, I've said many times here on the show, city councils, county councils, state legislature, they make decisions that will more directly impact your life than a president ever can or will. So I can't argue, really. Your life might be the same, regardless of who wins the presidential election year. But all joking aside, this is really concerning, because what this means, if you start to have in America the largest voting bloc, independent or unaffiliated voters, those not associated with one of the major parties, sitting out, then you basically have the most partisan, the loudest, and the most dedicated political soldiers, if you will, of the two major parties deciding all of our elections. Because don't forget, president isn't the only thing on the ballot this year. The future majorities of Congress and the Senate, the federal level, those races matter. If everyone's checking out, then it's just the diehards of the two major parties deciding everything. It's kind of concerning. But the trends, Natalie says, if you look at the exit surveying, general public opinion polling, and what the political scientists are saying, looking at the last few election cycles, Natalie writes, the trend definitely suggests this is headed at some point to be the largest voting bloc in America. Voters who aren't. It's concerning. I don't know what the solution is. I have no idea. A link to the article, if you want to read the entire thing, is pretty lengthy, but well worth your time, on our Facebook page. And we'll be back with more of KVN News for the People after the news with KVN News Will Feel Right.
Well, thanks, Jason. The news this hour is brought to you by Napa Auto Parts. A new report shows that when it comes to retaining workers, employers often have to consider how employees understand the word value. Not solely the value of their incomes or benefits, but the value of giving back to the community. More and more employers across the country, including in Utah, are noting that employees are demanding charitable work to be a part of the work structure. Now, these employees not only desire days to volunteer, but also want opportunities to build connections with community agencies. Now, as financial magazines have reported in the last several years, these are employees in all industries, including profit-focused careers in finance and business. Now, in Utah, employers have responded to these expectations, along with the desire to retain their workforce, by adding volunteer opportunities during the workday, doing company-wide volunteer work monthly or quarterly, and also creating foundations that are raising money to contribute to community projects. Well, traffic along I-15 in Salt Lake City was disrupted early Saturday morning while officers were investigating shots fired. Now, Salt Lake City police said the incident occurred overnight, and by about 7:45 Saturday morning, they had not received any reports of property damage or injuries. Now, at around 6:30 Saturday morning, a Salt Lake City police vehicle had executed a brief rolling roadblock on northbound I-15 near 4500 South. Around the same time, the I-15 on-ramp at 1300 South had been shut down so that officers could collect evidence. The investigation remains ongoing. An outrage over a man who struck a wolf with a snowmobile, taped the injured animal's mouth shut, and then brought it into a bar has resulted in a proposal to tweak Wyoming's animal cruelty law to apply to people who legally kill wolves by intentionally running them over. Now, under draft legislation that is headed to a legislative committee today, people could still intentionally run over wolves, but only if the animal is killed quickly, either upon impact or soon after. Now, Wyoming's animal cruelty law is currently written to not apply to predators such as wolves. The proposed change would require a person who hits a wolf that survives to immediately use all reasonable efforts to kill it. Now, the bill doesn't specify how a surviving wolf is to be killed after it is intentionally struck. Well, we've enjoyed clear skies, and it's felt a little bit more like fall, with these temperatures staying in the low 70s today compared to the low 90s that we saw over the weekend. And as we head through this week, temperatures are going to stay right around the mid-70s through the next several days, with mostly clear skies. Overnight temperatures are going to stay right around the mid to low 40s. I'm Will Feelright with your KVNU News Update.
ABC News, I'm Chuck Sievertson. The White House and state governors are saying everything possible is being done to help people hit by the destruction from Hurricane Helene. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper.
This is our main mission right now, and this is a massive coordinated effort to help this area, both in the short term and in the long term.
VP Harris at FEMA headquarters, the federal disaster agency in Washington.
I plan to be on the ground as soon as possible, but as soon as possible without disrupting any emergency response operations, because that must be the highest priority in the first order of business.
President Biden says all help requested is being provided. A limited ground offensive by Israeli forces into Lebanon against Hezbollah militant targets is planned, says a U.S. official to ABC News. A change by the Biden administration. Migrants will not be processed for asylum when U.S. officials deem that the southern border is overwhelmed. This is ABC News.
Hey, radio listeners, before we get you back to the music, let me tell you real quick about what I did that is saving me a lot of money. I got new insulation in my house. That's right. Now, I know you're thinking, boring, but have you seen the reports lately about how better insulation can save a ton of money on your energy bills? I can tell you it made a huge difference in my home. I mean, not only does the temperature stay perfect, but my energy bill is definitely down. Do what I did. Call Cardall's Insulation, 755-5012. That's 755-5012 for Cardall's Insulation.
This is Branch Office Administrator Bobby Vedrero bringing you the daily financial market report on behalf of Financial Advisor Clayton McMurdy and Edward Jones. The last batch of weak manufacturing data added to August and September's bouts of volatility driven by fears of an approaching recession. Those fears were soothed by the recent announcement from the Fed. So the combination of Fed speeches and manufacturing readings will grab some of the attention in the next couple of days. But the spotlight will shine brightest on the latest employment figures later this week. This will start with the job openings and labor turnover data, followed by ADP, private payrolls, and initial jobless claims on Wednesday and Thursday. The headliner will then hit the stage on Friday with the non-farm payrolls report for September. Markets would probably prefer a Goldilocks reading, not too hot, not too cold. That indicates the economy is still on sound footing, but not accelerating at a pace that would reignite inflation pressures and threaten the Fed's ability to continue to lower rates over the next several months. Today, U.S. equities closed higher. The Dow closed up 17 points. The NASDAQ closed up 70 points. The S&P 500 closed up 24 points. And in the bond market, 10-year Treasury yields are trading at 3.78% higher by 0.04 percentage points. This has been today's financial market report brought to you on behalf of Edward Jones, member SIPC and financial advisor Clayton McMurdy, serving individual investors with personalized attention and financial advice at 1309 North Main in Logan. If you would like additional information, please contact our branch office at 435-753-0537. Daily commentary is also located on our website at edwardjones.com.
Hi, John Weiss here. Fall is a beautiful, busy time of year. Whether you're juggling fall sports schedules, hitting the trails to hunt, or coordinating the annual tailgate, you need a vehicle that can do it all. During our Jeep Adventure Days, you'll get 0% APR financing when you purchase a 2024 Jeep brand vehicle. See dealership for details. There's never been a better time to get behind the wheel of a reliable ride, so stop by at Heritage Auto, your hometown dealer with the biggest deals.
Patrick Belmont, candidate for state legislature in the 3rd House District here in Cache Valley, Logan City, roughly. Currently represented by Representative Dan Johnson, who announced his retirement here on our show back in January. Patrick Belmont squaring off against River Heights Mayor Jason Thompson in that race. Thompson, by the way, will join us on Thursday. Belmont joined us a couple of weeks ago to talk about his run for the legislature, but he was in the news again in a way that kind of scared me because I had not thought about this at all. I'd noticed it, but I hadn't connected it to wildfire. Today, we're reading about the canyons and campsites being closed in the Uintas because of the wildfire. Not officially determined, but at least believed at this point to be human sparked, because there have been no storms with lightning to do it. So that's the assumption, at least, though not confirmed. I was thinking about that, and because I'd looked at that story, I started looking at other wildfire stories and ran across this one in the Salt Lake Tribune this week, or over the weekend, talking about Logan Canyon and quoting Patrick Belmont. Patrick, if you remember when he was with us speaking as a candidate last week, he is a hydrologist and geomorphologist at Utah State University, a researcher, a scientist, known as the water expert on campus. And he is quoted in the Salt Lake Tribune. They're talking about first and second dam and the sediment buildup. You may remember we spoke with Mayor Daines, I think 3 months ago, we were talking about this, but about $1.2 million allocated in the city budget this year for this 5-month project at Second Dam to remove the sediment. And one story I'd completely forgotten, Utah State University students used to jump off of Second Dam, and if they did, they earned the title of Dam Aggie, D-A-M. But they couldn't anymore because the sediment there were islands in the middle of what should have been a deep reservoir. And Third Dam, a few miles up canyon, even worse. If you've seen that recently, Third Dam looks like a tiny little stream running through fields of cattails and marsh. And it's originally and intended to be a very deep reservoir. So the problem is expensive to fix, basically. I'd never connected it to wildfire until now. Belmont quoted in the Salt Lake Tribune alongside Logan City officials and fire ecologists at Utah State University, Larissa Yoakum, that this presents a pretty significant problem. Sediment, Belmont says, is, it's normal. Comes downriver, just a natural amount of it. But anytime there's an avalanche or any other kind of big event, then a lot of it. But over time, it just builds up and it fills the reservoir and backs up against the dam and can actually cause dam failure. And it's very expensive to remove, but must be done on a regular basis. The Logan River watershed, though, he said, like many areas in the Utah's National Forest, hasn't experienced a significant wildfire in a long time, meaning there's quite a bit of fuel out there and an overgrown forest with a lot of fuel, dead and otherwise. So he said, this poses a pretty severe risk in which a fire could be kind of unstoppable. And how that connects to the reservoirs itself, I had honestly never thought of this. But the problem and where the two connect, basically, is that when to prevent wildfires, you take preventative actions, controlled burns, thinning trees, things like that. But the problem is that wildfires, if one sparks, are going to contribute a lot of sedimentation. So if there is, let me back up. So what Belmont is saying is that just statistically speaking, a massive wildfire is due. And if one sparks, it's probably going to burn a significant number of acres in Logan Canyon. After that happens, that sediment that fills up in these reservoirs is going to get worse. It always happens after a wildfire. It's part of a natural process that plays out. Fires burn old trees, sick trees, downed dead trees, clean out the fuel, and then kind of replenish some of the natural fertilizer in the soil. But then, in the years in between a massive wildfire and the forest regrowing, you get a lot of sediment wash, and the rivers can even change in the riverbeds change because there's so much of it. And it's, again, a natural process. But what Belmont's pointing out is that it's not happened. None of this has happened for a long time. So his concern is that some of these combined problems in Logan Canyon could be just kind of building up for disaster. Now, this big project by Logan City to clean out First Dam at the mouth of the canyon is a pretty significant amount of money, $1.2 million. I think the state helping out with some of that as well through federal grants, but I'm not sure. And that is good. So a lot of sediment cleaned out over the last 5 months of First Dam. But Second Dam hasn't been touched. Or I'm sorry, Third Dam hasn't been touched. Second Dam, again, $1.2 million, 5-month project at Second Dam. And it looks better, basically. First Dam, of course, located at the very mouth of the canyon, owned by USU, faces some other issues. And though it doesn't directly affect the city's water supply, sediment buildup disrupts the natural flow of the river there, which harms the ecosystem at a pretty popular spot for USU students and Valley residents. But also is going to be, Patrick says, the main collection point for all the sediment after this inevitable large wildfire. His point in all this is not gloom and doom and causing panic. His point is to say, look, we've probably got a window of time to do something about this. And part of that is going to be maybe stepping up the timeline on cleaning some of the sediment out of these dams at a faster clip. But it may not be enough. We may actually need to look at the designs and strength of the dam, whether those reservoirs are a good idea in the first place or even necessary. Again, the sediment removal at Second Dam cost $1.2 million and took 5 months. You've got 3 other locations where you need to do that to avoid some sort of dam failure after massive and rapid sediment buildup after a wildfire. Patrick Belmont is saying we've probably got a window of time to do this, but we need to actually do it. This can't be kicked down the road anymore. Again, I'd never connected the two, but it makes sense that if you haven't, kept the sediment buildup in control, and then you have a wildfire and that massive next year sediment wash off that always follows a wildfire, you could see, dam failure. What comes if there's dam failure is there are a lot of different theories on that. But the one thing that would for sure happen is downstream, some homes would be lost. We would probably, at least for some time, lose Logan Canyon Road, the road through the highway through the canyon to Garden City and Bear Lake. And we would likely, I think, be looking at a definitely multi-month, but if not more multi-year cleanup effort on all of this. And then downstream, especially in the island area, you're probably looking at you're definitely looking at loss of homes. And if there isn't, evacuation time, possibly even loss of lives. It's a pretty scary scenario. And again, I'd never connected these two. I'd read from the Yellowstone to Uinta pipeline folks. They're still doing their presentation on this. I'd read before that the Logan Canyon area and a lot of the surrounding mountains have been. They haven't had a massive wildfire like a forest normally would have. And the smaller fires that have started, we've effectively, extinguished, and we're due. And when it happens, it's going to happen. And as Belmont says, there's so much fuel out there, it's probably going to be a big one. And then the next year, 25% of all of those roadside hills where that fire is likely to burn are going to wash down into the river. That river is going to be muddy and gray all summer long. It's all going to collect in the reservoirs. And these are some very old dams. Check it out. The Salt Lake Tribune also included photos. They actually went out with Belmont and some other researchers at Utah State University and took some pictures of what they call the stress portions of the dams, dams that could be in pretty big trouble. Interestingly enough, there are some upgrades made recently to Third Dam should help, but enough? Well, that depends, Belmont says, on how fast that post-wildfire settlement comes down. Check it out. I've linked to it on our Facebook page. We'll be back with more of KVN News for the People right after this.
Disasters don't wait for a convenient time. When the unexpected strikes, call the trusted team at Blue Sky. Remember, Blue Sky is that same great ARS team you know and trust.
This is Tom with Blue Sky Restoration. When disaster strikes, whether it's a flood, fire, mold damage, or an unforeseen accident, Blue Sky will clean up, repair, and restore your home or business like it was before. No disaster is too big or too small. For all your restoration needs, you can trust our Blue Sky team.
Hip or knee pain? Scan. Plan. Now you can. Ask your doctor what Mako robotics-assisted joint replacement surgery can do for you. Surgery carries risk. Recovery and results may vary. Revision surgery may be required. Ask your doctor for important safety information. Visit MakoCashValley.com to learn more. That's MakoCashValley.com to learn about robotics-assisted joint replacement.
Does your dryer take longer to dry your clothes? It might be time to clean your dryer vent. Having a clean dryer vent shortens your drying time, increases the lifespan of your dryer, and decreases your risk of a house fire. Call a Logan-based business, The Duct Hunter, at 435-770-4813 for a quote and to schedule an appointment.
We are the Duct Hunter. Breathe better, save money, protect your home. We are the Duct Hunter.
Veterans face treacherous situations filled with peril while serving our country. Many veterans come home physically injured, suffering with PTSD, have traumatic brain injuries or other ailments. Treatment is available, but we need your help. Help Heal Veterans, with the support of generous citizens like you, improves veterans' lives on a daily basis across the United States. For over 45 years, Help Heal Veterans has provided over 30 million therapeutic art kits and craft projects to these critically injured veterans, at no charge to them. Doctors, therapists, and brain injury experts recommend this type of therapy. Since the beginning of World War I, over 100 years ago, art and craft therapy has proven to improve gross motor skills, improve memory, and lessen anger issues in healing veterans. To volunteer or learn more, visit healvets.org. Help a veteran. Visit healvets.org.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. A reminder, Cache County Clerk Bryson Bem will be joining us in Hour 2, starting Hour 2, to lay out the election timeline for you. The deadlines you need to know about, when you can expect ballots to be mailed or show up at your mailbox at home, Dropbox location changes, the Amendment D that will be on your ballot but won't count whether you vote for or against after a court ruled the legislature's ballot language was too dishonest. All of that explained with Cache County Clerk Bryson Bem joining us in a couple of minutes here. Wrapping up Hour 1 with this, Utah lawmakers, for sure, it's been rumored, but for sure now, will be taking this up in the legislative session, and it will be a debate over a bill to ban cell phones in classrooms, a known and growing distraction in Utah schools, according to parents, teachers, and even the kids themselves. Very disruptive. When I think about this, though, I keep going back to one teacher who told me it's the parents texting their children while they're at school. That sticks in my mind. But they're going to be debating a ban. I can't necessarily get worked up in opposition or in support of a ban in the classrooms. Kids will be fine. Don't give me that. Parents, I understand wanting a way to get a hold of their kids should there be something tragic like a school shooting, which unfortunately is, a way of life in America these days, to worry about that type of thing. I get it. Those are viable, these are legitimate concerns, I think, to not ban. My concern, the one red flag I have on this one, and one I'd urge everybody to kind of think about and speak to your lawmaker about as they start this debate in the legislative session in January. I keep thinking of all these times when we, with good intentions, solving an obvious and known problem, came up with a quote-unquote solution that really wasn't, and then patted ourselves on the back. We hadn't really solved the problem. In some cases, we made the problem worse. Back in the 80s, I don't remember this. I've read a lot about it, but there was this massive fever to ban arcades for the same reason. They were distracting. They were making our kids dumb. They weren't paying attention in school. They were spending too much time there. They were going to be joining gangs and getting really violent. And so there were, and at the time it was like Pac-Man and Asteroids were the two games in every arcade. But there was a huge effort to ban them, and it seems silly now, looking back, right? I also remember Tipper Gore and a sheriff in Florida making a really bad rap band, Two Live Crew, Rich and Famous, when the sheriff arrested them and Tipper Gore tried to get their albums removed from Walmarts. The end result of that ban was they got rich, and they still were awful. I think about that anytime we're talking about things like a ban. Whether it's an assault weapons ban or ban on cell phones in classrooms, I think it's worth asking ourselves at least if we're getting creative enough in trying to solve these very real problems. Maybe not. Either way, it's confirmed. Senator Lincoln Fillmore announced today he would be running a bill, and it would be up for debate on banning cell phones in classrooms here in Utah.